Welcome to Spirit Journey Collective. I'm your host, Sarah Ty. Get ready for compelling conversations with guests of all walks of life who believe they have found their purpose. Together, we will uncover unique backstories, hearing the raw experiences that led them to the work they are doing today. Let's expand our minds together with the captivating stories and inspiration that awaits. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Spirit Journey Collective. I have a really fantastic guest today. His name is Bryan Barrera. He's an executive leadership consultant, an author, and a speaker. And I can't wait to dive in and see what more that you offer. So thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, no problem, Sarah. It was great meeting you and your sister at the Trajectory event a couple months ago. And when we spoke about this possibility, I think this is really cool, and I really like what you're doing. I really enjoyed our conversation, and I'd love to be a part of it.
Awesome. Yeah, it was so nice meeting you too. Your story was what caught my attention. And yes, as I mentioned earlier, my cat. Okay.
Very curious.
Yeah, he wants to be part of the show. But yeah, your story was very inspiring. You were a speaker the week that we met at the Trajectory meeting. And I remember thinking, I need to have this guy on my podcast. I need to have his story shared. I feel like there's a lot of wisdom that you bring to the table that I think that a lot of my listeners will appreciate. So why don't you just share a little bit about what it means to be an executive leadership consultant, what you do exactly, and we'll go from there.
Cool. Yeah, it's kind of embarrassing sometimes to say what I do. And the reason why is because people don't really understand what I do right off the bat. And even sometimes when I say what I do, I come off very it comes off, not me, but it comes off very conceited, I guess. Kind of know-it-all-ish a little bit. I've had that situation happen a couple times recently. Someone asked me what I do, and I'll say I'm an executive leadership consultant. And they ask me, like, what's that, right? Well, what exactly does that mean? That's the first question they ask. And then I'll tell them an executive leadership consultant. I work with 3 different areas: small business, medium-sized businesses, and large businesses. For the small businesses, startups, I usually do like more one-on-one or, teaching or consulting their team, their executive team, because as a startup or small business, probably only have a few employees. And then medium-sized businesses, I show them a lot more on, not being stagnant, going to sales, marketing, strategy, and leadership development. And then for the bigger corporations or municipalities, we go more over leadership development, understanding your leadership style, understanding how treating your employees the right way in a privately held business can increase your profits, or in a municipality or a corporation, it can just make a better environment and make a healthier lifestyle, healthier work life balance for your employees. So that's what I do. And when I work with a different sector, small, medium, and large, that's the differences. It's a lot more intimate, a lot more detail oriented with the smaller organizations. And as we move to the larger organizations, it's more about culture. It's more about getting people on the same page and sharing that vision and sharing that purpose. And then the second question people ask me after that is they say, people actually pay for that? So, so yeah, it is actually being paid for, and my business is starting to do really well. But that's what I do. I'm an executive leadership consultant, and sometimes when they ask for more detail, really what I do, my real title is industrial organizational psychologist. So I know how to go over organizations, industries. I know how to dissect an organization, dissect an industry at a high level, micro level, and micro level, macro and micro. But that's really what I do. And when I bring it into layman's terms, that's what I am. I'm an executive leadership consultant, and I just love helping businesses out with leadership.
That's so cool. And I almost want to challenge you a little bit. When you started off saying, well, it's kind of embarrassing, and some people immediately think it's conceited. I'm like, no, what you're doing is amazing. And there's a ton of business consultants out there doing what you're doing. But the thing is, your niche is more about being able to see how I feel like you can see from the outside how the engine is running of a business. And because you need all the parts, the employees, the different management styles, and then of course I'm not a business person by any means. I'm definitely more right-brained oriented, but you kind of can see the outside and see how things are not working properly together and how you can get it all on board. It's kind of what I gathered when we met the first time, is that you can, and I'm talking about like the culture, the environment, and looking at all the employees and all of the people that are involved in your business. That is 100% a thing, 100% a very it's a niche thing, but it's one that is needed There's definitely a need for it. And it's nothing to be embarrassed about or even feeling conceited. I feel like once we find our gifts, once we find what our superpower is, our next job is to embody it and to fully integrate it and say, this is what I do, this is what I offer. It doesn't mean you're better than them. It just means that you have an expert eye that they don't because you have different gifts. Their gifts are completely different than your gifts, but your gift is being able to come in with this vision for them. And that's what they're paying you for, right? Is you being able to help them make their vision a reality by seeing what kinks could be worked out.
I wish they all thought like you, Sarah. No, that's awesome. Yeah, I really appreciate what you said. Yeah, it's the embarrassing aspect of it is like sometimes when you say that, you're waiting for the ice to roll, or you're waiting for people to say, what the hell's that? What is that? And that's what I get pretty much every time. And leadership consulting is still a fairly new construct. It's been around forever. It goes back to this awesome lady called Mary Follett in the 1920s or 1940s, maybe throughout that duration. And she kind of started with leadership as a new science, and now it's evolved to the great leaders that I followed, Jill Robinson Hickman, and there's some really, really good researchers out there and PhDs and doctors that go into the power of leadership. And I'm so passionate about it. But the problem is that I still deal with people that when I tell them about leadership and how much it can affect your bottom line, and I can quantify it and I can show it, like most of the time they're just like, oh, they still think that leadership is, as a fuzzy subject, or they think that culture is not real. You don't need culture in an organization with 5 people. You don't need leadership in a facility with 5 people. And I could not disagree more. I think that, and I get this every day. They're like, I don't think I need that training yet. And I'm like, wait a second. If you're by yourself right now, if you got 3, 4 people right now, what do you think's going to happen when you start getting more people in and you don't even know yourself? You don't know what your leadership style is, or you might get someone in who is exactly like you guys butt heads, and then after a year or two you can't stand this person anymore and they own half your business. It's so important for you to understand yourself before you jump into hiring other employees.
Yeah, I can relate a little bit to the eye rolling and the I don't get it because my business, as you know, is also unique, probably a little more unique than yours, just in the sense that it has a little bit more of a stigma to it,
Mm.
being as I'm a tarot reader and a spiritual advisor, which I get a lot of. It's funny. I thought I was going to get a lot more pushback than I do, but I think because I've learned to just like, this is what I do. And those that are meant to work with me are drawn to me. And those that aren't either aren't ready for me or I'm not the one to work with them. So that might be an interesting shift for you too, is if you immediately get that pushback, maybe they're just not ready for you, but you're planting the seed by sharing what you do. You're planting the seed, you're letting them know like, hey, this is what I offer. And so eventually eventually this probably will become a pain point, right? And when
Yeah.
that happens, you know where to find me, but without feeling like you have to like defend what you do, or because you have businesses I'm sure that you already work with that are amazed by what you offer. And they, they're the ones that those are the people that you want working with you because you don't have to like convince them, right? They already know that this is a pain point. I mean, some people do need convincing, but sometimes they need to start with a seed and just kind of
Yeah.
see what happens. Okay, I hear you. You don't think you're ready for this, but if this becomes a thing, this seed right here, you know where to find me.
No, that's a great point. The seed, that's very cool. Planting seeds. That's what I wake up every morning early doing, planting some seeds. I got you. Yep,
Yeah.
I agree.
So how did you find this work? I again, I kind of know your story a little bit, but for the listeners who don't know, how did you become an executive leadership consultant? What led you here?
Oh man, so that's the long part of the story. Yeah, I started off, I've been working since I was 10, 12 years old. My mom was an immigrant from Mexico, so was my father. They came from Mexico City, Mexico. They got their citizenship in the 80s through a Ronald Reagan program that was happening for workers, and they got their papers. It was amazing. I'm so proud of them. And my dad ended up working for Cardinal Health, which is a huge medical device company, one of the top medical device companies in the world. He got a job at a warehouse there. That's where he went through the program for his papers. And man, he just got everything done, and he stayed there for 40 years. He just retired about a year ago from the same place for 40 years. Talk about the American dream, right? And my mom, she loved teaching, so she went to college for like 10 years, And even though my brother and I always helped her with her homework, she still did the lecture, went to the lecture. She still went to class to take the tests. So she ended up getting her AA. And I look back at what she did, and it's just so inspiring. Unfortunately, she passed away a few years ago from her battle with her second bout with cancer. But yeah, just so inspiring. And they've always taught me about leadership and culture and treat people the right way. Yeah, so I started working at an early age. I started like at 10, 12. She was such a hustler. My mom was such a hustler, right? So she was a teacher's aide. So one of the teachers, Lynn Ryder, her and her husband Bob Ryder, they hired my mom to clean their house on the weekends. They knew she was a single mom. They knew she needed money. My mom and my dad were divorced at a very early age, so she needed to hustle. So we worked there, and I really learned about discipline and dedication and just working hard. We did that on weekends. My mom already worked a 5-day job, 5 days a week job, 40 hours a week, and she still hustled on weekends to make ends meet. We lived in an apartment a few times, but we lived in houses as well. She did so much for being an immigrant, being a single mother, and she really just showed us how to work hard and sometimes play hard, right? So but yeah, so I remember they lived in Ukaipa. They had like a huge mansion. Their driveway was like a hill. And me and my brother would spend days just cutting their grass and trimming their trees. And we were paid very well. I wore Jordans in high school because I worked hard. And, like I was able to buy nice clothes. So I played a lot of basketball. But, anyways, so I learned about that at a young age. And then I got into construction at 17, right when I graduated high school. Got into construction. I loved working hard, loved working out. It was a great job that I had. And then it started raining. So when it started raining around September, October, I forgot. It started raining and I wasn't getting paid. So I was like, wait, I want to get paid. This sucks. I'm gonna go join something else where it's not seasonal and I can get paid all the time. So I worked at San Manuel and Domingo Casino, now called Yamava. Incredible place. The tribe is so incredible to the community. They give so much back. I went to Loma Linda Hospital. My son was a little sick a couple weeks ago, and one of the buildings is sponsored, owned by San Manuel. Incredible stuff. I became a host there. It was amazing experience for me, and we're kind of going through an expansion, so I kept applying for promotions, and I kept working my butt off. I remember I used to supervise like 30 ex-convicts at a time for redoing our bingo hall into a concert hall. So a lot of the newer employees, wouldn't step up, and a few of us did, and I was promoted to like a part-time lead supervisor role at 18 years old, 19 years old. And there was 30, sometimes 35, 40 ex-convicts that I would supervise through a labor agency. And not all of them were ex-convicts, but most of them were, and it was hard for them to find work. And in that process, I built a really good relationship with them because I was honest with them and they wanted that honesty. And if they acted a certain way, if they acted up, I would tell them like, hey, we had a great conversation where you said that you needed money to pay for your daughter's school or your son's football or whatever. And acting this way and taking long extended breaks or not working hard is going to take you away from that. And I'm not going to ask you back with the labor agency. I need you to really do what you got to do and help me. And I will keep getting you back every week because we had concerts every week. And when we would redo the bingo halls, one time I worked over 24 hours one time, all voluntary after the 14 hours. But yeah, I worked really, really hard. I refused to go home. I wanted to finish it. And they kept telling me, Bryan, there's issues, there's issues. You got to go home. I'm like, no, I want to finish this. And I remember I think I worked 28 hours, I believe. And then I came back 8 hours later and I did another 14 hours. And that's how crazy it was. We had to work really, really hard to get this stuff done. It wasn't always like that, just the first week. But yeah, so I started leading in that aspect. And then I kept applying for a position called executive host. I ended up getting that position and I became an executive host. It wasn't a traditional executive by way of like having a management team that you oversee, but I was an executive like when it came to taking care of the clients and comping them rooms and comping them tickets. So then I started going to Laker games with our clients. I was really living a cool lifestyle, doing some great things. Not so much for the Clippers, but the Lakers and the Dodgers. It was awesome concerts as well. We put together a whole tier system, and I really started to understand customer retention management. So in that aspect of customer retention management, I started to understand like what it takes to really be a sales and marketing person, not just a used car person, a used car salesman, or just trying to get sales. Actually understanding profit, understanding clients, understanding their family members, what their interests are, all that cool stuff. So then after that, I kind of got tired of the job after 6, 7 years. And then one of my clients, who's one of my best friends, one of my clients ends up saying, "Hey, come join me at Trademark Plastics." And that was a medical device manufacturer in Riverside, California. So I got into a whole different industry, and I did pretty good there. We were doing really good in sales, but then we had some operational issues around 2015, 2016. I took over ops because I was already in sales. And when I took over ops, I was already involved with operations a little bit. And it just really interested me. And because I got into ops, because the owners were so gracious enough to allow me to make that transition, they trusted me. From that point, they then said, "Well, we're going to send you to go get it educated." And I was like, "I have no college experience. Why am I going to? Well, how am I going to go get educated if I have no college experience? Like, I got to start off from the bottom." And they're like, "No, there's a program at Pepperdine that we know about. Pepperdine University's Grazia Dio Business School. We're going to enroll you." I said, I that's an MBA. I can't do that. I don't have collegiate experience. But they said, "You know what? It's okay. You have the equivalency. You've been an executive for so long. You have the equivalency of that education." So I got in, which was very, very cool. I got my MBA without an AA. I got my MBA. And then from there, my class advisor was like, "Your journey's not done yet. I think you need to go get your PhD." So now I'm a PhD candidate. The people that paid for my MBA at Pepperdine, I left that company about a year and a half ago. And Sarah, I love your passion that you have for what you do. I believe I share that passion for what I do. I think you've kind of alluded to that as well. Um, I love leadership. I love understanding leadership. And out of all the successes that I've seen companies have, I've noticed that, and people will argue to death about this, but I've noticed that in my trainings, in the companies that I've worked with, in the education that I've had at a PhD level, MBA level, out of all the stuff that I've seen, Sarah, people always matter most. It's all about people. It's all about sharing that vision, sharing that purpose. So I know I had a long intro right now, but after being at San Manuel, after being at Trademark, MBA, PhD, I'm it goes down to humility, and it goes down to treating people the right way. And that's what I teach now. That's how I got into what I do. Because no matter how much of a great product you have, no matter how great of a salesperson you are, you always need to have the people at your organization who believe in what they're doing, not what you're doing, in what they're doing. And if you share that common purpose, if you share that vision, it's going to show up in your bottom line. And it's going to show up, and it's going to show up in Christmas bonuses. It's going to show up in 10-year bonuses when you pay people back handsomely for giving you so much of their time. And that's what I love. And that's what I've been teaching. That's what I've been consulting. So to make a long story short, I love common purpose, common vision, and that's why I got into what I do today.
That's amazing. And I really love, how you're touching on, how businesses treat their employees is everything. And I think that that's kind of a newer concept. I
Yeah.
don't know how new, but I know at least since 2020, I know a lot more people ever since lockdown and things really got put into perspective. A lot more people were like, why am I spending all of my time at these jobs that I don't feel like I'm getting appreciated
Yeah.
or being taken advantage of or whatever else. And I think a lot of what 2020 gave people was perspective of I can choose where I work. I can choose where I want to put my time and energy. And and I think a lot of businesses are needing to catch up from that and this idea of, oh wait, these are the people like that are carrying my company. I need to really make sure that they feel like they're making a difference here and not just keep coming for a paycheck, right?
Yeah. My professor, Dr. Jim Salas, he wrote an article recently about exactly what you just said. People, for the first time in history, are actually leaving stuff because they don't believe in it, or because they don't like the purpose that they're all about. The water that you're drinking, if people don't believe in what they're doing, in what that water bottle company stands for, they leave. People, for the first time, are actually leaving because they want to be a part of something they believe in, and they're owning up to it. They're literally saying, "Nope, I'm leaving this company because I don't believe in what you guys are doing." People always talk. People have been talking forever, but they're actually doing it now. So now authenticity is more important than ever. And people, especially in a group setting now, they're getting a voice. And if they believe you're not authentic, they're going to call you out and they're going to leave the company, or they're going to, just walk out, like in the masses. So yeah, it's so true what you're saying. Absolutely.
And I think too, as an employer, I'd imagine part of the question is, do I want coworkers that are just here because they're desperate for a paycheck, but they don't actually want to do the work or really put in their all? Or do I want someone who really believes in what I do? And so the paycheck is just like the byproduct, right? It's just the extra part. I mean, obviously we're all here to make money, but it's more like I'm here because I love what I do and because I love what I bring to the table and I feel I'm appreciated. And so now I feel like I'm doing something that's worth it versus, I feel like in the past, the old paradigm was let's just get someone in here. And now
Hmm.
it's like, you want to just get anyone in here, or do you want someone who's going to really want to believe in exactly what you said, want to believe in what you're offering? And I also really love, and you touched on this in your story, how important honesty, integrity, and trust is in that particular arena. You want your employees to feel like you're not trying to pull one over on them, right? You don't want them to feel like they're being used or not getting the whole truth. And because then that's where trust gets eroded. And then when trust gets eroded, then you start questioning the integrity of the company and everything else. And so I feel like that's also been another thing that unfortunately a lot of employees have done. They have like management positions where they just weren't honest with their employees. And then later on it backfired. So I really like how a lot of what you teach is the honesty, integrity, and trust piece, because I think that that's not only does it lean more into authenticity, which is going to it's going to help everyone, right? The
Hmm.
employee and the employer, but it's like a safer environment overall.
Yeah, yeah, it is. It's crazy because you're not going to be perfect. Nothing is perfect. Every medicine they come out with, there's like a 5% of chance that it's not going to be effective, right? And that 5% is like a really, really good chance, right? It's the odds are in your favor. 95% it's going to be effective. So the same thing applies to anything else. Leadership, the followers of the company, it's exactly what you just said. It's integrity, it's ethics, it's morals, it's values. But also what I show is that it's not always going to work, and that's the unfortunate piece of it. I've made mistakes in my career. There's probably a few people, maybe three, four, maybe five people that don't like me, that don't agree with what I did, the way I did things. I remember one person in particular. They said, "I don't need to know all that. I don't need to know all that. Just tell me what to do." And I've seen these people lately, and that they're still like that, and they're okay with living the rest of their life this way of just being told what to do, because when they go home, they work on certain things. And even though they seem passionate, once the 8 hours hits, nope, I'm gone. Nope, I'm gone. And that's fine. We need people like that as well. And like I'm saying, sometimes the authenticity is not going to come off well. Sometimes you're going to reach people that just have had so many issues, Sarah, in their life that they just refuse to trust someone. So when you come off as authentic and full of morals, they've been through so much in their life, right? The hidden spaces of what's been happening to them in their life, their paradigms, their pain, they're gonna not trust you no matter what you say. But as long as you stay authentic, as long as you stay true to yourself, you know, good things are going to happen. Good things are always going to come. You also have to have some key performance indicators, right? You also have to have like some business sense and understand finances and understand sales and marketing. But understanding how good of a leader you are, or understanding your strengths, understanding your weaknesses from the very start is so important, because then you can hire people who can offset where you lack, right? So your podcast is doing incredible, but this is so awesome, the conversation that we're having. Let's put ourselves in a parallel universe where, let's say, you weren't a great marketer or you weren't great at sales, but you're such a great speaker. You dive into the soul of people when you're talking to them, in that leadership context of what I'm talking about. Let's say, like, I'm not a good salesperson, I'm not a good marketer. I know what to hire now, right? Now, do you necessarily have to hire someone who believes in what you believe in? No, but as long as they respect what you believe in and understand the vision of the company, that's what makes it powerful. It's once again, I always go back to that shared vision. So hopefully that made sense.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I'm a big fan of finding what your gifts are and then honing those. And then not really, you don't have to necessarily, I mean, I'm a big fan of growing and evolving, but sometimes we all have, I mean, we all have things that are not our strengths. Like, I'm gonna be honest, marketing is not mine.
Oh,
You
okay. All
know,
right. I didn't know that.
yeah, marketing and sales. It was so funny. I used to do Mary Kay a long time ago, and
Mhm.
I was really good at getting in front of people. I mean, I could do like 12 to 15 parties a month with
Wow.
people I didn't even know. I had lead jars in different businesses where they'd all enter to win a free party. And then, of course, that's where I get my sales. But the thing was, I loved the parties. I
Mhm.
loved the environment. I I loved all of that, but I was so bad at sales. And so despite getting in front of so many faces, it was the part where I had to convince them. And, and then there's a whole other aspect of team building and all this stuff. I was just like, how am I so bad at this part, but I'm so good at this part, and in hindsight, it just wasn't I wasn't really authentic in that work. I wasn't really me. Makeup and skincare is just not my my passion, you
Yeah.
know,
Passion.
right. But I have learned that the more you hone on what you're good at, then at that point you can start collaborating, exactly what you're saying, with those that can meet that their strengths are where you lack, and then your strength is where they lack, and now you can all work together. And I feel like I really want to see the world go more in this direction. The more we can be in our the more we can be in our gifts, the less we're gonna worry about where we're lacking. And
Mhm.
the less we're going to compare ourselves to others, because we know what we bring to the table and we know that someone else is going to be better in the areas that we lack. And now we can work together instead of comparing and breaking each other down. And so now we can build each other up.
Yeah. No, that's such an important point. That's such an important point. I fully believe in that, Sarah. Like, if you today, I'm going to speak today at 3:30 with student hires in Chino with my buddy Manuel Zavala. Yeah, he likes when I speak to the kids of his programs because I tell them, like, what if I told you that you can be playing with dinosaurs the rest of your life? But we don't know that, especially in areas of poverty, rural areas. We don't know these things. We don't. And the passion is such a crucial point. Me, for example, I loved playing basketball, but nobody ever sat me down and said, listen, Bryan, even though you're 6'1" or 6 feet tall, no one told me, like, listen, it's going to be very, very hard for you to become a professional athlete in basketball because you're not that tall in basketball. In basketball, you're short. The average height in the NBA is 6'3", 6'5", 6'7". Like, there's 7-footers out there. So there is a lot of 6-footers. There's a lot of them. However, you're not that fast. So if you work on your speed, you can have a chance. Nobody told me that. So that, and on top of that too, the referees aren't that fast. Referees make some really good money. They're at every single game. They traveled, everything's paid for. They love their lifestyle. Nobody told me that. No one said, Bryan, if you're not going to make it and you love basketball, go be a referee. And if you would have told me that back then, I would have thought it was an embarrassment. However, if you told me, you know what, they make $150,000, all their travels paid for, best like retirement plans, I would have been like, maybe I should chase that. Maybe I should go to school for that. But we don't talk about that stuff. You love that. My son loves dinosaurs right now. If he loves dinosaurs, and he's like really, 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 I know a lot of kids love dinosaurs. He really loves dinosaurs. But like, if he wants to do that, there's paleontology. There's so many other things out there that you can pursue the rest of your life. But we handicap ourselves so much because our parents didn't have the opportunities. Our parents didn't have those advisors to help them. But it doesn't mean we can't do it, right? But the key to it is what you said, Sarah. It's passion. It's passion because if you follow your passion your whole life, guess what? It's no longer a job. It becomes a part of you. It becomes a part of your life. And what does that bring, Sarah? It brings happiness, right? So sorry. I know.
It's time to take a short break from our wonderful speaker. Are you in the need of guidance around love, career, family, life, or purpose? Embark on a spiritual journey inward with an intuitive tarot reading. Depending on what you're needing and looking for, I offer private one-on-one sessions as well as personalized email readings. It doesn't matter what the question is. A reading with me provides connection with your higher self, offering curated personal messages, or what I like to refer to as spiritual roadmaps, guiding you to the future outcome you desire. Readings are insightful and affordable. If you'd like more information or to schedule a reading with me, please see the link below.
what you're saying is making me think of just what I've been picking up and learning about the different generations, right? So
Yeah,
I feel like Gen Z, they're like in this perfectly primed place where they can really step in, like find their passion sooner. So like I
yeah,
feel like Gen X and millennials, I fall into the millennial racket. I'm not sure which one you are, but it's like, you know, the Gen Xers were trying to recreate the boomer age because that's what they were raised with. And then millennials were told a lot about the boom, you know, idealism, right?
yeah,
And it's so funny because I know a lot of millennials who are kind of like waking up and going, what have I been doing for the last 15, 20 years? This isn't me. This is my passion. This doesn't feel like me. Whereas Gen Zers are having those little awakenings in their 20s. In their
yeah,
20s, oh, I hate what I'm doing. I want to find my passion. But a lot of millennials were still stuck into this idea of, well, you go to school, you get a degree, you get a job, you get a career, you get married, you have kids, you do XYZ. And a lot of us are waking up going, well, hold on. Why do we have to fit into this box again? Why do we have to check
yeah,
all the boxes? Especially if it's not bringing me joy or happiness. And so it's exactly right. When you step into your passion, well, first of all, I think you natural part of yourself. You find that like what you're naturally good at, where you don't
yeah.
have to work for it. You just know that this is your superpower. So that's one aspect of it. But the other part is usually whatever it is that you end up doing ends up being a service to others in some way too. So it's you get this both and of this thing that lights you up, you do all day long, you just love it, and in some way it gives back to the world. And that's
Mhm.
when you start to plug into something bigger than yourself, but also more yourself than you've been before.
Yeah. No, that's so true. I keep saying that because everything you're saying is so true. Like that's so awesome. Yeah, but it is like for me, for example, I've always been, I didn't know this till I went to my PhD, but to the Chicago School of Professional Psychology. I didn't know till I got enrolled and I started going through every single program. And I didn't know that I need to know more about behavioral analysis. I'm all about behavior. I've been good at it since I was a kid. When I was a kid, I learned it from my mom. My mom, the single mom, she got with my dad back and forth several times. And like I would always watch her mannerisms and my aunt and my grandma's mannerisms. I was raised by women and I would always watch them because being Hispanic, especially and from Mexico City, we're very, very animated people by culture, right? You ask people, do you know anyone from Mexico City? And they're going to say two things. They're very animated and also they talk a lot of trash. Like that's what we do, right? It's so funny because like my mom was like that, my grandma, but my dad's a lot more calmer. But I watched them and, you know, I came from a broken home. So it's that group, that leadership dynamic that I always wanted. You know, my brother and I, we own a company together now. We're very, very close now, but we weren't close for a long time. And that's just because that's the way my mom's side of the family was. They just weren't close. When they were happy, they'd get together. If there was an argument or a fight, they had such a strong ego, very animated, got loud. They would not talk to each other for years. And I hated that feeling. So now, like, I thought it was, I loved basketball. I thought I loved it, but it wasn't just that. It was the community, it was the leadership, understanding that a leader, you know, you're not just in it for yourself, you're in it for your people to take care of them. And now through my PhD process, you know, hopefully I'll get it soon. I've learned now like it's about purpose, it's about vision, right? If you share that passion with employees, they're going to fight not for you. It's not about you. They're going to fight with you. And you said this earlier about this is like the new norm or this is the new thing. And you're right, it is because we're so used to the past of like the CEO gets all the credit, the CEO gets all you know all the awards and recognition and the money and but like no, they're not in that no more. That's not what we're going today. And that's why it's even more important that if you're going to be giving back to your people, you better make sure those people have the same vision and purpose that you, same passion that you have. It's so much more important that everything has changed since COVID. You know, it's gone really, really that way. Like, if I'm only going to live today, I'm not going to live tomorrow. Like, I want to do something that I'm doing happy, right? I want to be happy about what I'm doing. And if you got to go to work 5 days a week, 40 hours a week, and your boss wants you to sometimes work 50 hours a week because a project's being done, you want to make sure it's something that you're passionate about, something that you love what you're doing. And in there, this is what I'm consulting, and in there, you lose the spaces between. It's very, very, in my opinion, it's very, very spiritual. It's why I'm really excited to talk to you about this because, you know, a psychologist, when they're speaking to their client or the person they're assessing, you know, they ask a lot of questions in the beginning, a lot of questions to understand the psyche, the pain points, the history of their patient. So that way, and then you start evolving more to the now and the future and stuff like that. But you have to understand that when a trigger hits that patient and the psychologist is listening, there's spaces between there. Even though the patient is not saying how they truly feel, it's the psychologist's job to understand what's really hurting them in this certain instant, this certain issue, right? The patient might be like, I don't know why I'm getting so upset about this. The psychologist, they know why. They know what's going on in between there. And that is called invisible leadership. So when a leader, when a team is working dynamic, when a team is dynamic, when a team is tearing it up, it's when there's no leader. It's called leaderless leading, is what it is. And this, I hate the Celtics. I'm a hardcore Laker fan. I said that earlier, but the Celtics, they won a lot of championships back in the 60s and 70s. And there's an excerpt in a book from Peter Senge, The Fifth Discipline, and he talks about he has an excerpt from Bill Russell when he won championships, and he said, and don't quote me on this, but he said that you know, we were all from different parts of the world, different backgrounds. Some of us were from the city, some of us were from the farmland. But when a game got really, really close, towards the end, the last 1 minute or 2 minutes of a game, it's when time just slowed down. It just slowed down. And it's so funny, Sarah, because when I read this, I was like, whoa, why is it the last 2 minutes of a sporting game is always the longest time of the game? Sometimes it lasts an hour, sometimes 30 minutes, sometimes even more than an hour. And I'll see statistics pop up when you're watching TV and it'll say like the last 2 minutes has been going on for an hour and 15 minutes. Like time literally slows down. And when I read that excerpt, I was like, whoa. And he said he saw everything happening in slow motion, every pass, every fake, every shot, coaches' decisions. And he said at one point, one of the players was open and he was like, should I go get him? Then he thought about it and he was like, no, I trust my teammate. He's gonna go get him. He sees his teammate move, and then he realizes, holy crap, all this just happened in a split second. Time slows down. So the psychologist with the patient, understanding the middle, understanding what's not being said, right? Then put yourself in a basketball game, understanding all that work, all that preparation, all that teamwork, all that trust is happening between right in front of your face in real time without anything being said. Same thing in an organization. In an organization, when you land a big contract, when you have an incredible month of efficiency, it's because there's no leader. It's because there's trust being built and you trust each other to be doing what you got to be doing. That's been happening forever. But now we're actually starting to talk about it because now we're starting to understand as employees, even though we're not the CEO, we're just as important as that CEO is. And that increases the whole point of leadership being a team. Sorry, I keep going off.
No, I love that. I mean, that's you're talking about how everyone has value in their position and you want them to feel that way too. Like that you want them to feel like their role is important. The reality is it is important, but I think the old paradigm was if you didn't have a title, you're just a worker bee. And
Yeah.
it's like, well, hold on. We're floating your company here.
Yeah.
And one thing I wanted to share with you that I always find so interesting to share. I don't know if you ever follow astrology or anything like that, but and I'm not huge into astrology just because I mean I love astrology. It's just like a giant math problem, and I'm not math, so like I don't think it's ever going to be like my thing. But I love following it. And one thing that happened in 2020 that I love to share because it's so fascinating. We moved from the age of the Capricorn into the age of Aquarius. It was December 21st, 2020, and so Capricorns are very structured. They like things. I mean, they're like the management and the CEOs. Like that's just most Capricorns end up in those types of positions because they're leaders. They like things to be black and white. They like things to, run smoothly, and they like tradition and structure, and they don't like to mess with it. Right? Aquarians are very creative. They're very outside box thinkers. They're very much like, and the other thing is Aquarians like to bring people together, community. Right. So we shifted, we did this big energetic shift from traditions and everything else into this more fluid of the people energy. And it
Yeah.
shifted right in the middle of 2020 when all of a sudden we were in this position where people didn't know what the heck was going on and what they're going to do next. And now it's just so fascinating. I remember hearing about it before I really saw where it took us. And now in the hindsight, I'm like, you know what? The energy really shifted. I mean, I know it shifted
Wow.
because, COVID, but did COVID really happen on accident when you look at like some of the bigger moving parts?
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah,
Wow.
just a different way to look at it, because it's just so fascinating seeing how different the workplace is versus how it was. And it is a lot more free thinking and fluid and outside the box and creative. And there's a lot of innovation going on. And whereas before it was very much stuck in this old way of doing things.
No, yeah, I completely agree. And it's so crazy you brought that up because even though I'm not into astrology as much, it kind of scares me to be honest with you. Because even though I'm not into that as much, what I'm learning right now about leadership. One second, I got to find the book. One second. Margaret Wheatley. That's the author's name. Her name's Margaret Wheatley. Leadership and the New Science. Mary Follett from the 1920s, 1940s. Jill Robinson Hickman. They all talk about this new leadership as a new science. About the main thing it's called is invisible leadership. I was talking about that earlier. But check this out. This is crazy that you're talking about this and you brought this up, which is really cool. So the sun, right, has a gravitational pull with the earth, right? But there's a nice happy medium there. For some reason, it doesn't get too close, it doesn't get too far. But if it does, the gravitational pull works. And I'm by no means am I a scientist at all. But just think about that for a second. Now, can you see those fields? With the naked eye, can you see those fields? Can you see the gravitational pull happening? No, you can't. Doesn't mean it's not there. A black hole or mass or whatever, you can't see it forming, it just happens. That's the same thing as an organization. So I've literally been studying this stuff right now. It's the same thing as an organization, Sarah. So when you walk into an organization, can you see gravitational pull? Can you see the emotions? Can you see the pulse of the organization? You can't, but it doesn't mean it's not there, right? And that's so cool because I'm so fascinated. So I was always into sales and marketing. Then I got into business and understanding how to dissect business. And now I've gone into this whole other realm that I'm just so fascinated by. It's my passion. And it's understanding that leadership. It's understanding how, and I talk about this all the time, how when an owner of a facility comes to the facility with a Lamborghini, some employees, it's going to pump them up. Some employees, it's going to really deflate them big time, right? Are you going to see that with the naked eye? Unless you really look, you might not be seeing that. When I talk about this a lot, the janitor, if a janitor goes into the conference room and picks up everybody's trash, are people going to say thank you? Right? If you go into an organization and you really want to know what's going on, talk to the janitors, talk to the workers because they see things and they refuse to say things, but they know what's going on. I've done it several times where I'll go to the bathroom or I'll go to the lunchroom and I have a question and I'll ask somebody and they'll tell me everything. And I'm like, wow, I just learned about the company more in 5 minutes with the janitor or a frontline worker than with the CEO or the executive team, right? You can't see all those things. And the book, it's so fascinating. It compares those those visible fields, right? Magnetic fields, all that stuff that you can't see, but it's there. That's culture in an organizational setting. It's there. You can't see it. But if you really look, you could find things. And if you really look, if they're talking to people, if they're all on their cell phones, if they're all on their laptops, if you go out to the facility and they're in production and you see people not paying attention, then you're like, whoa, there must be some operational efficiencies here, right? When you go to a meeting and no one's talking to each other in the conference room and so are sitting far apart from each other, but these two people are talking, you start to see some invisible fields there. You start seeing like, whoa, there must be something going on here. You can see gravitational pulls. Sometimes you'll see someone walk in and people just light up and they gravitate towards that person. So, anyways, yeah, it was making culture, feeling, passion into these invisible fields that you can't see, and it was comparing them to what's happening in space. And it's just so cool. Very cool.
I mean, spirituality and science are basically two sides of the same coin. Whatever is happening in the science field, it's pretty much happening on the energetic field as well. And I love hearing about stuff like that. That's very cool.
You were talking about millennials earlier, and what I was. I'm a millennial as well. I'm
Okay.
37. So I know what
Yeah.
you're talking about. Yeah.
And there's so many, like, 'cause I 35 in a couple months. Ugh. But I don't know how I feel about that number. But a lot of ranging from here to like I think millennials go up to like maybe mid 40s. I'm not entirely sure, but I think that's like right around the cutoff is like up there. And it's like I've talked to many people in that age range that literally did the whole waking up thing where they're like, what am I doing with my life? This
Yeah.
doesn't feel like me. This doesn't feel authentic. I don't want to, I think the old paradigm of you get the same job, you work there for years and then you retire, that was the American dream.
Yeah.
But how many people were really happy in the work that they did? How many people really felt fulfilled? And even like retirement, like I can tell you right now, when I get older, I don't want to retire. Like you see a lot of that too, where people retire, then they don't know what they're doing with their life. And they're like, then they just slowly decline because they don't have a passion to plug into. And so I feel like it's just so important to know what that is. And it can evolve and change over time. Like when you go into retirement, you can find other ways to fuel that, you find other ways to fuel that passion and purpose. But I think that's what keeps us not just in our joy, but it keeps us alive and it keeps us really in our prime. And yeah, I feel like definitely in the millennial area, like I feel like we started the wake up, but Gen Z, they're just figuring it out a little quicker.
Yeah, no, for that waking up, that hits home. That hits home so bad. I recently had a moment like that, but it wasn't for me. It was for my wife and my daughter. As I mentioned about my mom earlier, she was a jealous person. I'm a jealous person. I'm not gonna lie. So maybe that goes back to me being a Cancer, like we were talking about earlier about personalities and signs. I'm a Cancer, very passionate, very sensitive. So yeah, with my wife, I'm a jealous person. My mom was a jealous person. So my mom, by nature, a big reason it didn't work with my dad was because of her jealousy. I remember that she didn't have a lot of respect for women, women that were going after my dad, and that kind of stayed with me as I got older. And I remember that I was a bit of a playboy back in my day, and my wife knows this. So I was, and I wasn't the nicest person to women that I was dating back then. I was very yeah, I just was not very, I wasn't the most respectful person. I am an open doors guy and stuff like that. I just wasn't as respectful as I should have been. For my wife, I've always opened doors for her. I've always paid the bill. I'm very much old school in that sense, and she loves it. There's some people that still love that, right? And that's our relationship. But I've had that moment recently because now, as I've transitioned, as I go back and I'm like, man, some of those girls I dated, I should have been nicer. I should have not broken it off so fast. I should have been more respectful. But I did those things, and it's like now I have a daughter, and with my daughter and with my wife, so I had that moment years ago. And sometimes I've seen some of these women at events, and I'll go up to them, I'll say, "Hey, I'm so sorry for how I mistreated our breakup, or how I just was just not a very respectful person." And it's happened a couple of times. So I kind of went through that transition with my wife where I started to really, really respect. And this was all when I was 17, 18, 19 years old, by the way. But I still remember it, that sensitivity. And now with my daughter, she's so smart. She's just like daddy when it comes to like business. I could tell she's going to be a business person. She has her fake cell phone. She loves her fake cell phone. And what I'm getting to, Sarah, is like I've had this transition of just now. What I'm seeing with my daughter is I can't imagine waking up one day, being 40 years old, being a female, being 40 years old, and looking back and never having an opportunity, always being a housewife, never being given a chance, and all that talent going to waste. Like I know the Me Too movement, it's no one talks about it anymore, but like it's with my daughter, with my wife. My wife is our CFO. She's so brilliant. I can't imagine her being married to someone who doesn't adapt, who doesn't evolve, and is just so stuck in the past. And I can't even, you were talking about waking up one day and be like, what the hell am I doing in my life? I feel so bad for all the women and obviously other races. A lot of races have been through so much in life. But I'm talking about my experience with my wife and my daughter, just thinking about me telling my daughter old school values, me showing her like, nope, you're going to be a housewife. Nope, that's not the way you're supposed to be. Just thinking that just hurts me because so many people have been through that. And I want to see her go to business school. I want to see her I want her to work with daddy. I want her to be CEO of my company one day. But it just hurts me that so many people have gone through what you said, that point when they woke up and they're like, what the hell am I doing with my life? And it hurts me even more that some of those other people didn't have an opportunity to change it.
And no, that's beautiful. And I mean, honestly, it is really cool to hear you acknowledge, you know, your past when you weren't able to see it the way you're seeing it now. And that really shows growth, that shows evolution. And I mean, it really just, and compassion, because I think there's even, you know, I see even some compassion with your younger self. Like I just didn't know. And now I'm seeing that. And so it's like, that's beautiful. And then being able to, you know, look at your wife and daughter differently when some men still can't do that,
No.
you know? And so I think that that's beautiful. And I've definitely heard like the divine feminine is, you know, basically making a comeback, and not like in a feminist takeover kind of way, but in a let's break down the patriarchy a little bit
Yes.
and let's make it a little bit more malleable, and it doesn't have to be so black and white, and women are so much more than housemakers and stay-at-home moms, and you know, so I think that's beautiful. From here, I would love to shift to what I like to call synchronicity story time.
Mm.
And I know we talked about it a little bit through email, but I love synchronicity story time because it's a cool way to remind all of us that there's something higher. There's some higher power. We're not alone. There's things that we can't explain that happen, you know, and I think every single person has some kind of experience, whether they fully acknowledge it or not. I think we all have been there where we're like, what just happened?
Yeah.
And it's magical. And I'm just curious if you have a story like that you could share.
Yeah, that kind of goes back to our previous topic. Something's always pulling me, Sarah. Something's always pulling me. And it used to annoy me, and now it's just like, okay, let's roll. It comes with saying I'm sorry to somebody that I treated unfairly 20 years ago. I've been in situations where my wife will tell me too. She's like, you know what, just walk away. I'm like, no, I gotta say something. And I'll say something. But it happens to me a lot more with speaking, Sarah. Like speaking engagements, oh man, I'll get so nervous. I'm like, what am I doing here? And then the moment it's time to go on stage or to go to a panel or whatever, something just pulls me. Like it just feels like an outer body experience, just like boom. And I'm just there. And next thing you know, I'm in the zone and all of a sudden it's over, you know. And it's so funny because that happens there, but I get that feeling when it comes, like, you know, when you're getting out of the car and you're in a hurry and you got to get as much things as you can, you don't want to go back or it's really late, so you try piling everything on and you go through your garage and your keys fall and you got to get your keys, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh man, all right, I'll get it, and then you try getting it and everything falls, right? I have that experience so much, and I believe, and if I offend any listeners, I apologize if that's not my intention, but I believe in God, I believe in Jesus Christ, and when that happens, that's what I feel. I feel like something, a spirit is like grabbing me and telling me, don't take the easy way out, Bryan. Set everything down, and it's God always teaching me patience. That's my thing, and it happens to me just about every day, Sarah. My life is crazy. My business partner, who is like so awesome, he is a very, very intuitive person. Him and my wife like to call it a life in the day of Bryan Barrera because I never let opportunities pass by. And I even irritate people. They're like, dude, just let it go. They're like, you're too busy. Let it go. I'm like, no, because you never know when it's going to go away. When you're hot, you're hot. When you're not, you're not. And so when it comes to going to the garage, getting the stuff, putting it down, something telling me to put it down, going on stage, something pulling me. And when it comes to opportunities that pass by, I always feel something pulling me. And it used to be, you know, "Oh, no, whatever, just do it, whatever." But now it's become like, oh man, this is gonna be fun. And like it's something's pulling me to do it. So hopefully that answered your question. But yeah, there's always something pulling me. And it goes back to since I was a kid.
Yeah, that reminds me of this quote that says, if it excites you and terrifies you at the same time, it's probably for you.
If you can find where that's from, let me know. I love to read that.
Quote that I've heard a few times on one of my favorite podcasts, and I just adopt. I think it's true, you know. So I try to remember that when I get really afraid. I know, like you said, it's for me. I'm like, okay, there's a reason. You know, I can relate a little bit. I mean, I don't do a lot of speaking, at least not yet. I kind of feel like I might be heading that direction eventually, but I'm not there yet. But when I do readings, for instance, like when I sit down And I'm going to tell you, every single time I sit down for a reading, even if it's just, whether it's at an event where I'm meeting with a bunch of different people who hired me for an event, or if they hired me for one-on-one, I am going to tell you, like, even though I've done this, I've done hundreds of them by now, I'm so scared before I get on that Zoom to talk to them, because in the back of my mind, I'm like, what if I'm wrong? What if I don't pick up their energy at all? And everything I say doesn't make sense. And then they call me a fraud, and like I'll get all these insecurities coming up. But then I think, okay, there's a reason they're connecting with me. There's a reason they found me. There's a
Yeah.
reason I'm hired for this event. And so I've learned to just trust it. And the other thing that comes up is sometimes I'll pull cards and at first glance, I'm like, I have no idea what this means. And
Yeah.
it just looks like a confusing mess. And I'm thinking to myself, how do I answer this question with this? you know, but I've learned again to just start talking, to just,
Yeah.
okay, there's a reason this came up the way it did. And there's a reason this person's sitting in front of me like they are. And I just need to trust. And so I feel like when you go on stage, when you say it's kind of a blur, you're probably channeling to a point. You're probably things are coming through you that's, like you said, you're in the zone. It just flows, right? And that's kind of what I found with my readings. It just flows, and then it resonates, it makes sense, everything is good. And then I walk away from the reading going, okay, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing. But I still get nervous every single time. It doesn't matter if I've worked with them before. I still
Yeah.
have that. It's like, gosh, what if I'm wrong? What if I don't pick up right? What if? But the more I just follow it and I just do what I just trust what comes through, the more rewarding it is on the other side. I mean, and I've had to learn a lot about, like, sometimes the card meanings change in the middle of a reading, like how I would normally read it. It's presenting itself intuitively differently. And I just have to trust it, speak on it, and hope it lands. And the more I trust, the more I'm learning, like, okay, there's a reason I'm doing this work. So I love that story because it really shows a lot of people. I'm sure there are many people who fill the pull, just like what we're speaking to, but they don't follow it. And the what ifs are louder than the negative what ifs, the positive what ifs, right? And so I think it's powerful to share these stories of just do it. If you feel called, if you feel pulled, the worst, I mean, honestly, the worst case scenarios almost never happen anyway. They really
Yeah.
rarely. When I first started coming out as a tarot reader, I was like, oh my God, people are going to attack me. That was initially my thought, was I'm going to get attacked by people who don't believe in this. And then especially when I started doing like farmers markets, I was like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, what if someone comes up and throws the Bible at me or
Oh
something?
man.
I mean, I don't know. That was my fear. And it's like I'm open to all religions. I'm, to be honest, probably a good 50% of my clients are Christian. So, I don't feel like there's any particular higher power to it. I mean, I think my belief is it's all right, all religions are right, but I think that it's whatever modality you plug into is what speaks to you. That's just how I see it. So like I'm open to everything, but I was so afraid of what other people would think. Those things never happened. If someone was afraid of me or didn't like me, they just avoided my table.
Wow.
I never got the pushback I was afraid I was going to get. So I think it's why it's so important when you feel called, listen, because you never know where it's going to take you, but likely it's going to take you to a better place than where you are now.
I actually just had one of my, I'm just going to say ex-employer, an ex-employer, wasn't my boss at all, but an ex-employer, like a part of the family, sent me a message on LinkedIn. It was about me, but it wasn't directed at me. And it was very negative. It was my first interaction, negative interaction. And I read it and I remember I just smiled. I was like, man, I'm going to pray for this person because, and I hear people say that before and I'm like, yeah, whatever. But no, I really felt that. Like I was close to this person at my last job. This person spoke very negatively about the way things were going. And now that I left 2 years later, I'm speaking at events and doing stuff, and she makes a comment, and I know it was directed at me. People told me it was directed at me, and I'm just like, wow, you know what? I'm gonna delete you off LinkedIn, but I'm gonna pray for you, right? So yeah, I know what you're talking about, Sarah. I've gone through the same fears. Like I told you, like there's probably 3 to 5 employees who have thought I was too much for them. I was too aggressive, or because remember, they don't know that I feel that something's telling me to chase these opportunities. They might look at it like, oh, I'm being too opportunistic or I'm being too aggressive. And I have been in those situations. So they probably, I probably had people out there that thought I was too aggressive, who didn't like my style, and that's fine, or thought that I treated them unfairly. that's not fine. And I hope that's not the case. But there's a few that probably thought that. And it scares me that, like, okay, what if I post a leadership post and it's that one person that I had a bad day around? Or it's that one person that, thinks I'm fake and is going to respond and say I'm fake. Or I remember like 2 times somebody said I was deliberately going after them at work, like in a bad way, like trying to make them quit or something. And I wasn't. I was just trying to help them, but maybe my authenticity was too much. Maybe me wanting to coach them and talk to them every day was their way of thinking I'm aggressive. And it happens. People misconstrue things, or people just misunderstand things. So I have those fears, Sarah. Like, not like you. That was when you told me that right now. I was like, whoa, what happened? Because people get really, really touchy about religion. So I can't fathom what you went through those first few times. So happy that it's gone well for you. But yeah, I feel what you're saying. When I speak at events, when I post things, I'm like, dang, is somebody gonna respond and say something nasty about me or whatever? And it's powerful. It takes a lot of courage to do what we do. So
Yeah. And remember too that, we are allowed to change. So even if someone has a bad experience with you, it doesn't make whatever you're posting now a lie or irrelevant, or, it just means that this is how you see things now. And I mean, hopefully that doesn't happen again. You don't have to experience that again. I'm of the mind that everything happens for us, not to us.
mm,
And that's a hard concept especially when we're feeling personally attacked. But you have two choices. You can either kind of slip into the victim mentality, or you could slip into the driver's seat and say, you know what, this was a really not so great experience. How can I work past this and not let it stunt me or keep me still? You know?
yeah,
Um, and so I feel like being able to, whatever happens is kind of, it's meant for our highest good at some point. I've had some interesting, mainly it's been on like Facebook groups when I post, which is not often, but I'll post, like a advertisement, right, for readings or whatever. It doesn't happen often, but there's been a few times where I've gotten a lot of very religious comments on there, and I used to feel like I had to defend it, and now I just look at it and think, oh, thank you, you're giving me exposure, because the more you
mhm,
comment in it, the more people are going to see it.
yeah,
You like I understand that they're feeling that they're doing what they need to do, and we don't have to agree, but I'm not going to defend myself anymore. And that's kind of where I'm at now. Is I just feel like those that are meant to work with me will find me, and those that aren't either aren't ready for me, or aren't I'm not the person for them. And so I think that when you're able to see it that way, it's a little bit easier to understand that those that reject us are actually doing us a favor.
that's a great point. I will try my hardest to keep looking at it that way.
Yeah, because we don't want to work with someone who's going to push back and not really do much with our gifts anyway. It's not helpful for them or for us. So, gosh, it's been such a great conversation.
Thank you. I've had fun.
Yeah, this has been great. The final question I love to ask everyone is, do you believe that we all have a mission or purpose here?
Yes, absolutely. And it kind of makes me sad that we don't all believe that. That's why I'm here. That's one of the main reasons why my business, like I said, I go after small businesses, medium-sized businesses, and large businesses, and I have different strategies for each. But the people that I really want to talk to are three groups. It's the business owners, the business leaders, then it's the college experience, universities, college, and then the children. I think the children are our future, and I think everybody's here for a purpose, no matter what, no matter what. And I think we've spent so much time fighting stereotypes. And I think we find ourselves fighting stereotypes, and also people telling us, you can't do this, you can't do this. And I think we've gone way too far with that, by the way. I think we're too much like, oh, you can do whatever you want. That's not true. It's not. I can't be a hair model right now, Sarah. Like, unless it's like a bald care product, right? But yeah, like, it's just not going to happen. There has to be some reality behind that. However, if you tell someone, hey, you can be successful in your own way. Hey, you can do this, and this is what you have to do. I think if we go with that mindset, everybody has a purpose. Everybody has one, no matter who you are. Everybody has one. And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get the kids to stop being negative just because their parents have had negative experiences for generations. Let's break those paradigms. I know they went through a lot. I get that. Doesn't mean you have to. Let's chase that passion. Let's fight that passion. And then maybe one day you make enough money where you take care of your parents and you change that paradigm that they have. For the college and the students and who are being told, oh, that idea doesn't make any sense. Oh, that idea doesn't make any sense. And it's so hard for them to get funding for their projects. So they go to school to learn about this stuff. Understand what your real purpose is. Don't do what everyone else is trying to do. Understand what your purpose is. What are you good at with business? What is your differentiators? So everything I talk about, I can put that into a business sense, but I'm making it to layman's terms so that way we can really fight this together and make some common sense here. Not just talk about profits and losses and bottom lines and EBITDA and all this other stuff. No, let's talk about some general things and let's try to tackle those. And then for the big businesses, the startups, the small businesses, for them, it's like, listen, I'm trying to show them what are your competitive advantages? What are your competitive advantages? Where are you lacking? Where are your inefficiencies? Because if you show them all those things, then they start to paint a vision, a purpose for what they're doing. Listen, you want to do this, but you're doing this the wrong way. Listen, you want to do this, but you're doing this the right way. Let's do an analysis of your business so that way we can find out what your real purpose is. So, yeah, I think everybody here has their own individual purpose. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, it did. And a lot of what you're speaking to in the beginning is really deconditioning what we were told. And I do disagree a little bit. I feel like we all really could do whatever we wanted, but I see your point, like, well, unless it's for like what'd you say? You can't be a hair model unless it's for like, someone who's, bald, but even
Bald
that,
care.
yeah, technically. But I think it's not so much that, because the way that I see it is it's more about figuring out who you are underneath all the conditions that were given to us, the shoulds, right? The society shitting all over us.
Yeah.
Love that expression so much, but it's the shoulds of you should do this and this and this, and being able to peel back those layers and figuring out who we are underneath all of that, what's ours and what isn't ours. And once you find yourself, then you're able to start plugging into your passions. And then that's when you can start plugging into, well, what is that passion? Where can that take me? And then, following the breadcrumbs. So, I mean, I do think it is possible to do anything, but I think a lot of the times too, people think their purpose or their vision is them. And then they come to find out that they're following someone else's dream too. Yeah. So, I mean, I 100% believe that I think we all have a purpose. And I think it really, exactly what you're saying. It comes down to like figuring out who you are underneath everything and what you're told. And, I think it's such a beautiful thing to be teaching kids is, just because this was your story up till now, and this was your parents' story, doesn't mean it has to be your story.
No, and there's probably a lot of pain behind that. Like that's the one thing I really want to touch base on. It's like there's probably a lot of pain behind that. I've done a lot of studying, a lot of research on this, and a lot of those conversations, the tough conversations where people don't believe you, people don't trust you, going back to the invisible spaces, right? The spaces between. It's not because what you're saying, it's because all those years in between of them being fired and these people being looked over for promotions, all that pain has caused them today. And not everybody has a positive mind frame because we're all built differently, right? But it doesn't mean that they're lost. It doesn't mean that they can't find their way again. And perhaps you are a piece, perhaps your purpose is to be a piece of that puzzle. And 20 years down the line, when your parents are 60, 70, 80 years old, you know, they see that you changed that paradigm and you change their paradigm before it's too late. And to go back to the do whatever you can do. I do believe that. I do believe you can do whatever you send your mind to, but I'm just saying like more realistic sense, like what I meant was, okay, if you're 6'7", you're probably not going to the moon because you're not going to fit in the space shuttle, right? Doesn't mean though you can't work for NASA. Doesn't mean you can't be a scientist for NASA. Doesn't mean, and that's what I mean. It's like just more realistic in a frame of like, man, you're probably not going to be able to do that, but you can do something cool that's very, very similar in the same field. And that's what I do. That's what I teach these kids on. That's why I mean that whole basketball. Okay, I'm gonna have to be super, super fast in order to be in the NBA, or I could just be a referee. So and I think we don't talk about that enough, Sarah. We don't tell people enough of that, and it's just sad, and I'm all forward to bringing up those conversations to the masses.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. So if our listeners want to work with you and either, they have a small business or they're a bigger business and they want to learn more, either how can, and you're also an author too, you have a book, is that correct? So like, how can they find all of that if they want to work with you?
Yeah, just my website, lcinnovation.org. Find me on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn 24/7. I love LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn is my Twitter, my Facebook. I love LinkedIn. Um, yeah, that's it. lcinnovation.org. My book, it's called Your Ego, The Real Reason Your Business is Failing. I love the title. It makes me laugh every time I say it. So yeah, my book, you can find me on Amazon, and then also Overhand, OVRHND.com. That is our a clothing line that I own as well, with my brother. It's called Overhand. It's taken off. We're about to sign our first two fighters. One fighter is Ebony Bridges. She's the most popular female boxer in the world. They call her the Blonde Bomber. She's from Australia, but she lives in the UK. We're in negotiations to sign her right now. And then we're also going to sign Rosie Eccles, who is going to represent Wales in the Paris 2024 Olympics. Our business is taking off. Our fighters are amazing. Yeah, so overhand.com, lcinnovation.org, or you can find my book on Amazon, and our clothes are on Amazon as well. So that's the way to find me.
Perfect. I'll be sure to put all that in the show notes. So if you want to work with Bryan, you know where to find him. Just look in the show notes below. And this has just been such a great conversation. And I think that there's just so much wisdom that the listeners can take from this today.
Thank you for the opportunity, Sarah. Had a blast.
Thank you for joining me on another inspiring episode. Remember, your purpose is a unique and unfolding path. I hope these conversations have ignited a spark within you. Until next time, keep exploring, growing, and embracing the beautiful adventure of connecting with your purpose. Stay tuned for more meaningful conversations. If you enjoyed the episode today, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And thank you for joining me on this journey.